all, thank you very sincerely from all of us. Especially those that we don't get to work every single day with. It's honestly awesome to see what you're doing out there, and I mean it in a very sincere way. That we appreciate everybody, and everybody is so integral into what we do as a company and the culture that has been created for the last 35 years, and that really the point of this discussion today and future discussions and trainings that we're going to have is really to try to assure that that culture stays within the company, and that it also gets disseminated down to everybody. There are quite a few trainings I know that everybody has. These are more corporate trainings. However, I know that we have divisional trainings. I know we have positional trainings as we go through it. And so as we do that, just a reminder to all of us that like our core values are important. Trust is huge, passion, integrity, and loyalty. And really, as we talk about accountability and project and team organization today, it's really to try to get these core values better implemented in what we do day to day in our project teams and in the construction that we do. And so this is our training topics for 2026. This slide shows kind of where we're going. Amy did a phenomenal job of helping to organize this, put it together. And so we really appreciate Amy. One of her roles is as manager is to make sure that Procore obviously is functioning the way we need it to, that Builder is functioning the way that we need it to, that they're communicating with our project teams so that we're efficient what we do, but also to look at the training and see as a company what we need to do, how we need to do it. And so she's done a great job. So Amy, appreciate you. As we go through the topics and we look at the topics, they're really one building on another as we go down through. Today's discussion is very principally based. It doesn't get into specific job responsibilities. Todd will get into a little bit of specifics when it comes to project organization and the organization of our teams. But really, we want to talk about accountability as a general principle, talk about our project organization, our team organization, and then next month, and you'll see these start to come out, and Amy's started to send them already, but we're going to get into very specific job responsibilities. It's important, if we're going to talk about accountability, it's important for people to understand what that accountability means as well. And then further on, we'll get into financial forecasting. We'll get into KPIs that we'll be using for project teams as we go through our QA, QC, and safety programs. Scheduling in August, September business plans and construction plans. And then October, we'll kind of try to close out a little bit. Again, November, we'll talk about legal and contracts, but in October, as our year end closes out on September 30th, Kyle and Chris are going to give our training on the mission, the vision, and our core values and our goals as a company as we kind of move forward. So that's kind of where we're going. I have the opportunity to speak today a little bit about accountability and what it means. And just a general definition: to be responsible and answerable for one's actions, decisions, and their consequences. I think over the past 10, 20, 30 years, sometimes accountability has taken on a negative connotation. They are giving me more work. Oh no, am I responsible for this? Am I going to get blamed? Whereas in reality, accountability is a positive thing. It's impossible for one to feel accomplished without an accountability. And so the positive connotation really is, hey, it's an opportunity to grow, authority to lead and execute, higher engagement and productivity. Jason Checketts could speak to this, but every study that's been done recently in the past, I'll say the past 20 years, talks about people and why they stay at a job, attrition rates, and how we keep good people, and why all of you, frankly, are here at Westland. And if you look at the kind of the reasons people stay or join a company, number one is a feeling of accomplishment. Number two is the people they work with. And number three is their actual pay. And I think sometimes as we look at, we all have budgets. We all go home and talk to our spouses about, the budget of the family. But really, when it comes to the work environment, that actually is number three on all studies that have been done across. And the biggest one is that sense of accomplishment. And so as we talk about accountability, it's impossible to have that sense of accomplishment that I hope every one of us feel. It's impossible to have that sense of accomplishment without accountability. But also, accountability can cause frustration if we don't understand kind of our roles and responsibilities, and how an organization should function. Um, this is a traditional org chart. This is, I used Kyle Terry's division, healthcare and private sector as an example, but you'll see it's set up very top to bottom, so to say. Again, I wish we didn't live in a world where this was important, but yeah, we have to put this in our proposals. We put this in our SOQs. We put this in our presentations because people do want to know how we're organized. However, it should not be the way we generally function as a company. And as I skip to this next slide, there really needs to be more of a circular accountability. I used a project manager as an example in this because as you function throughout your different roles and responsibilities, it's easy to say, hey, my boss called, or hey, I have an email from someone I report to, et cetera, et cetera. What becomes more difficult is if we're the type of people and the type of leaders that take our, and I'm going to put this in quotation marks, our downward accountability, if we take it as serious as our upward accountability. 20 years ago, I was, maybe I'm going to age myself, Jason. No age discrimination on this. But 20 years ago, I was a young executive in a development company. We did resort development internationally. And we had three arms to the company. We had our operations arm, we had our sales arm, and we had our development arm. And I ran our development arm. I'd grown with this company. I'd been with them for 6 or 7 years, living internationally, and the opportunities were just kind of there. And I don't really credit myself with being intelligent by any means, but I was responsible and a warm body, I guess. And so I ran our development arm for this company. I remember one day in particular, I was extremely busy, and I was going from one thing to the next, and I had to catch a flight, and it was about 4 hours away is where I had to drive to catch this flight. And I had given some assignments to part of the project team down there, specifically one of our admin. And if we looked at a typical organizational chart, you might say, oh, an admin. Well, they're not that important to an organization. They're at the bottom, if we were looking at it from a hierarchical standpoint. And so I'd given her some responsibilities, and I came into the office. I had 5 minutes, and then I had to absolutely run to go catch this flight that was 4 hours away. And she had not accomplished one of these objectives, and I came absolutely unglued. And I reprimanded her in front of an entire team. And I will tell you, this person was a friend of mine. I was very close with her. She was extremely intelligent, extremely responsible. And so for her not to get a task done was not in her nature necessarily. But I left feeling horrible. I actually felt horrible about that. Even to this day, I've apologized numerous times. I'm still friends with her and still apologize every time I talk to her. And it taught me, though, an important lesson. Really, at the end of the day, as important as we think all of our responsibilities are, I wasn't the guy who was putting the screw in the drywall, so to say. I wasn't the one polishing the floor. As a construction company, really what makes us money, and I don't shy away from saying that, but what makes us money is our productivity. It is the people that are actually doing the work. And sometimes, even frustratingly, I don't get out on the job sites quite as much as I'd want to, because that's where I feel the best. That's where productivity actually happens. Fast forward 20 years, the week and a half ago. I had a Wednesday. Like many of you, my day was absolutely slammed. I was 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. meeting after meeting after meeting, and then responsibilities with my family after that time at 6 p.m. I had no time at all, and I was running from one meeting to the next, and I just felt like I couldn't catch up with the day. I was 5 minutes behind on everything that happened, and hopefully Ashley Jones is okay with me sharing this story, but Ashley stopped me. It was a very similar day to the one I'd had 20 years earlier. And Ashley Jones stopped me. She said, "Hey, I need 10 minutes of your time." And I think my first thought was, I don't have time for 10 minutes. But learning that lesson 20 years ago and how badly I felt at the time, I said, yeah, I've got 10 minutes. Ashley does quite a bit for our company. She manages all our international entities, as well as trying to manage a lot of different travel and nuances within Procore and our international teams. And so I said, yeah, I've got 10 minutes. And we sat down and we went through some questions that had come from a legal team in Latin America that needed answers right then. And if we didn't get the answers, we weren't going to be able to get our entity set up, et cetera, et cetera. And so we sat there, went through every single one of those questions, answered it, and pushed forward. And because of that, we now have an entity in this specific country. And not only that, but we're able to bid a project. I can imagine if I had taken the same reaction that I had 20 years earlier, blown that off, how Ashley wouldn't have felt that it was important, or how she wouldn't have been able to accomplish her accountability within the organization, and it would have fallen apart. That's just a small example of how important it is, I think, to view our accountability as circular as possible, and really ask ourselves, do I answer an email from a laborer or a foreman as quickly as I answer from a project manager or a project director? Am I as accountable in what I put in quotation marks, in my downward accountability as I am in my upward accountability? The idea that our values can permeate through different projects when we have over 400 employees now, and we're working in 15 different countries and have projects all over the US, to the idea that those values could permeate down. The only way we can get those to permeate is that we're all bought in with those same principles, that we all are treating each other with that same accountability. There's certain actions that come with accountability. If you're an accountable person, you follow up, you return your report, you offer solutions, you accept feedback, you have attention to detail, you're proactive. People that have lack of accountability, they aren't necessarily, I don't want to put anybody in boxes, because they're not necessarily bad. Sometimes they don't understand their accountability. But people who lack accountability, there's a lack of organization, there's excuses for failure, there's complaints, there's defensiveness, there's often a tendency to blame others when things don't happen. They're reactive, and so you can see from my example, even 20 years ago, and trust me, I still have issues to this day. I'm not trying to paint that any different, but how reactive I was, and how easy it was for me to blame others, and how defensive I was 20 years ago compared to the hard lessons I learned throughout my career, and the ability to really trust, as one of our core values, to trust and have integrity with those around me. The most important way, or the easiest way to show our accountability, is really to just make and keep commitments. And that's with each other, that's with our clients, that's with our architects, engineers that we work with on a day-to-day basis. Hopefully this helps lead into a little bit more of what Todd will discuss. And many of you probably have seen this. Some of you probably have seen it. Shane's seen it for sure, because he used to work at Franklin Covey. But Franklin Covey went through a principle of the sphere of influence and sphere of knowledge. And really it relates to accountability in a very strong way, because as we continue to grow our knowledge, our influence also continues to grow. And as we continue to grow our influence, our knowledge continues to grow. And the whole idea of these trainings over the next year and is to talk about that accountability. Our sphere of influence is our accountability. And if we don't understand what our accountability is, then it's very difficult to have influence in our projects, with our project teams, with our clients. And this all relates to not just work, our work environment, but any title that we have, father, mother, sister, brother, it all relates in that aspect. And so as we go through these trainings over the next 12 months, the hope is, and we want to make sure and see if we can track it as well, that people are growing in their sphere of knowledge and their sphere of influence. Now, there's always, as your sphere of influence grows, your sphere of knowledge grows, and there's always this chasm that exists between the sphere of knowledge and the sphere of influence, and that's where our frustrations lie, right? As an example is, if we're talking about a project and we have an RFI, we can work within our sphere of influence unless we don't have the detail needed. And then we have knowledge that the detail doesn't exist. We have knowledge that a detail needs to exist. And so we create an RFI, but that's where that frustration lies. And then we get an answer back from the architect, and our influence grows because we're able to get that answer implemented in the field. And that frustration starts to go away. And so our influence continues to grow. And so very sincerely, I do appreciate all of you. And I hope that as we go through these trainings over the next little while, and specifically today with Todd, as we talk about team and project organization, that this is, number one, uplifting, and number two, that you can feel a sense of accomplishment, even higher accomplishment, as you go out and do the work that you guys do every single day. And so with that, Todd, I will turn it over to you, my man.
Okay. Awesome. You guys hear me all right? I guess I don't need full response, but just making sure. Amy, we good?
Yep, we're good.
Okay. Hang on real quick, guys. I'm going to share my PowerPoint. It's kind of done through a PowerPoint Live, and it might take a second just to load up on everybody's end. So just 1 minute before we can share screens here. I know it usually goes pretty quick here, so while it loads, I'll just kind of add some thanks to Jeremy, and do a little bit of a highlight for Jeremy. Jeremy's been a great mentor for me. He's not that much older than me, but those of you that have had an opportunity to work around Jeremy, there's a good reason why he's an asset to our company, and he's in the spot where he's at. He's very sharp. He's been a part of some neat things. He's humble and willing to kind of listen to feedback and to change. And so I appreciate your time there first, Jeremy. And I'm going to try my best to dovetail some of the training that I've got. We decided a little bit to cover these two topics, and going into the topics, each of us were preparing, and I wanted to kind of try to take a way of dovetailing accountability into project organization and meetings in general. So I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about that, but hopefully you guys are okay with it. There's a big list I'm looking at on my screen, and I apologize. I don't have an opportunity to know every single person. That's a goal that I'm going to have, but I suppose we'll never get it because the company dynamics continuously change. So let me just start off with a really quick question, and I'm going to put someone on the spot. Hopefully you can have your mic work. Dalton, are you in a spot where you could respond to a question that I've got?
Of course, if you can hear me.
Okay, and you can be brief. The goal is to kind of keep some of these brief. What do you feel is the biggest reason our projects might get off track?
The biggest reason, I think the add-ons of all the small reasons will always add up to a big reason that projects get off track. Missing one coordination there, missing a sub coordination there adds on a couple of days, and those days add up faster than one big issue. That's what I've seen.
Okay. You hit the nail on the head. I won't ask anyone else, but I think what Dalton mentioned is where I want to lean into. I assumed that anybody they asked would have responded the same, right? I think it boils down to lack of communication, right? Perhaps a little bit of process and organization, but to some degree, a big part of lack of communication. The topic I've been given is really broad, you guys. Like as I've thought about this and taken my place or taken myself places where I'm like, well, what am I going to train people on? And Jeremy asked me to take some pretty good time in having some fruit be there for everybody to learn. I recognize I'm not the expert in the room. We have a lot of great men and women that are on this call. Many of you are working in different roles, and so I realize that some of what I will be talking about may not be as applicable. However, I think you'll find some ways to apply it to your position and your role every day. And we also recognize that roles change. So it is important that we're doing these on a corporate level, just to have everybody getting the same information and everybody raising and building everybody at the same time. So I think that's kind of why we're leaning in here. But I recognize this will be a little bit of a challenge with the size of the group that's here. So really quick, I wanted to review first, dovetailing in my topic with Jeremy's, is established what we've called the 4 pillars of accountability. They're obviously what a pillar does, so I'm not going to explain that. I'm going to click kind of quick in through some of these, but if you notice, these are really what hold up kind of anything and everything that we do, and especially the accountability levels that are there. We follow the process. We take ownership in the process. When and if we happen to make a mistake, right, we're Johnny on the spot on owning it and fixing those mistakes. And then communication. I put communication and follow the process intentionally on the outside because I think these are 2 of the greater pillars that will support this action of accountability that's here. If you think about it, and at least to me, following the process combined with proper communication is being organized, right? Those 2 work hand in hand with each other. And sometimes at the first of all of our construction projects or anything that we endeavor, we might have to take and kind of create process. So we're trying as a company to have better mainstream processes and whatnot to help us be a little bit more organized. But sometimes we have to additionally create specific to what it is that we're doing. I'm going to have a few rhetorical questions through what it is that I'm covering. Those of you guys that don't know what rhetorical means, that means I'm not looking for a response, but I want you guys to really think about some of these questions. They're not crazy, but jot down personally how you think you'd respond. I think this reflection is how we grow and how we change in our lives, and these are going to be some good moments. So ask yourself, which one of the pillars do you personally need to improve on? If you need me to go back, I can go back. Following process, taking ownership, fixing mistakes, communication. I'd imagine we'll get these slides out to everybody when we're done as well. So don't be offended if I move on, but just a good rhetorical question there, leaning into kind of where I want to go next. One thing that I noticed as I was preparing, knowing that Jeremy was talking about accountability, is really just how accountability directly interlaces with being organized. If you guys really think about that, think of all your roles and all the things that you have to do on a daily basis. Well, the only way to accomplish all of these different things in our life, whether it's personally or professionally, even at home, and anything else that we're a part of in our lives, you have to be organized. And so they are interlaced like a rope, and they have to function and work together. I want to talk really quick about common sense. A lot of what I'm going to talk about sounds like common sense. This topic, again, it's intimidating because to me, it's common sense. The bad part is, as I thought about common sense, guys, and let me apologize. I'm going to say guys. I'm either going to call you brothers and sisters or I'm going to say guys. So don't be afraid that I'm using the Utah slang word for, hey, everybody here in the room. Let me just read this and I want to talk about it a little bit. I looked at the dictionary. Common sense is sound, practical judgment concerning everyday matters. Obviously, that makes sense. Derived from shared experience and basic knowledge rather than specialized training. It enables individuals to navigate life, evaluate risks, and make logical decisions. Okay, pretty simple. Often developed through cultural exposure and experience. Sometimes we take for granted that everybody should know what we know. Specifically this training, that the topic that I'm covering, I look at it saying, well, it's common sense. But then I also step back and I look at the company that we're running, and guys, unfortunately, we have plenty of opportunity for growth. If it really is common sense, the topic that I'm going to go over, how is it that we have so many mistakes still happening? So I'm going to drill into that. Because I got thinking, well, it's actually, maybe it's not common sense. Maybe people need some of the basics that are there. So, okay, question number 2. Let's see. Mike, Grant, are you in a spot where you could talk by chance?
I sure am.
Awesome. Thank you. Have you ever walked onto a job and immediately knew that it was disorganized?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty simple, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think everyone could join with Mike and say, absolutely. We've seen train wrecks, we call them oftentimes. So Mike, what gave it away though? I'm just curious, as you thought of an instance, what was it that gave it away?
It's just the way people are acting. I think everybody was acting, in a hurry. They weren't calm. They weren't collected. They weren't, they were rushed, I think.
Perfect.
So,
Perfect. Thank you. Chaos. I think what Mike was saying is, hey, and we've all felt it. And it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen in our lives as we apply some of the stuff. But you guys have been a part of it. We've been a part of chaos. And unfortunately, sometimes that does happen because of circumstance. But I think we can avoid chaos. And probably what Mike would have also added is, well, it's really easy to give it away. You just look around and see how much of a mess it is. And on top of people running around trying to get things done in a last second rush, it's usually also a mess at the same time, right? So thanks, Mike. Another rhetorical question, okay? I got 2 little ones here. If a client showed up to your job site unannounced, what would they see? I want you guys to ask yourself that question. I've been on a bunch of jobs. I know everybody has, right? And we've certainly seen just razor sharp ones, and then we've seen the adverse. And again, there's some grace there for what happens on a construction site, because it is. But the question is, when they left, do you think that they would be concerned, or are they leaving with confidence in who they've got running the job? Not just Westland, but down to the individual that's there. Here's another good one. Would they hire you again on how well you appear to be organized? There is a difference between that, guys. There's a difference between appearing as organized and actually being organized. What I have a goal as for our company is to change it for people to legitimately be organized. We had a project manager, and I don't know the full story. He's no longer with our company. But I was talking with some people a couple weeks ago about it and learned, and I'm not surprised, guys. And I'm not trying to talk bad about anyone, but this project manager, he left our company, and as others jumped into his workload, they found hundreds and hundreds of emails that were unanswered, not taken care of, maybe improperly saved. The point is I think sometimes the perception we have, and as leaders, we're going to try to have better touch points to help everybody. Sometimes the perception we have of somebody in a title or a certain position that's a leadership position is that they might be organized. My invitation to each of you guys is to figure out, hey, am I just the one presenting it, or am I the one that's legitimately an organized person? Okay. I came up with really going back to this slide. I came up really quick. Jeremy mentioned it. It's not all about money, right? But there's a simple mathematical equation. Organization equals profit plus less stress. And I put the two above it just to emphasize, right? I don't know that there's any better way to say it. If you want less stress and legitimately your company can or your projects can make more money, the answer starts with being organized. I'm gonna keep illustrating that. Another way of saying that, a little equation is high stress equals the need to be more organized, right? We work in a stressful environment, so mathematically, the only thing that we can do is be higher organized, right? So the largest part about being organized, it doesn't happen just in a meeting. It happens prior to, during, and after a meeting. So if you think about that, I'm going to say it again. The largest part of staying organized doesn't happen only in the meeting. It happens prior to, during, and after the meeting. I think too many of us feel like we're organized by being in the moment. And I think you need to find that, hey, you have to come intentionally prepared for what it is that you're going to endeavor. And you will become more organized during, but then you have to take a moment after as well. I think it's just important, or just as important. So really quick, I want to fly through some of these. I literally Googled like, hey, what are some neat meeting facts? And I was kind of surprised. Approximately 55 million meetings occur daily around the world. There could be more. 63% of those are held without an actual agenda. I'm also not surprised, right? That's huge. That's 34 million of those meetings. Now, you could argue, why does it need an agenda and what really is a meeting, but we're not going to go there. A lot of the managers, however, tend to feel like, hey, because they don't have planned agendas, then those meetings might not be unproductive. I think we've all been a part of meetings where we don't really know what it is that we're doing because there hasn't been somebody that's really outlined a solid game plan, right? I want to bump down a little bit just because I did some math. If you think about a typical manager will spend at least 65% of their work in our meeting or in working hours in meetings. If you use some of that math, and I forecasted a 27-year career at Westland Construction, a lot of our supervisor roles, they'll spend 56,000 hours, if not more, in your career. So Dylan Terry, I'm thinking about you, right? Dylan Terry, if he stays here until he turns 65, he's probably going to be in the 70,000 or the 80,000 hours of meetings in your career, right? And breaking it back down into days at that rate, that's 7,000, almost 7,100 full days of just meetings, which that kind of seems daunting, I think. The important part I wanted to link to this that everybody should remember, because I think all meetings can become more efficient. Parkinson's law says, hey, work is naturally going to expand to fill an entire time allotted to it. We see that in construction all the time. Owners say, well, I think it's going to take 18 months. So we build a schedule that takes 18 months. Meetings are going to be the same. So that's why it's important to focus on being efficient and having them be short meetings. I had a friend that actually told me the other day that there's a meta-analyst study that's out there that was recently performed, which basically apparently means it's the meeting of all meetings, or I mean the analysis of all analyses that are out there. They use 138 pieces of research to come up with some of these facts. One thing that I really thought was interesting is the fact that I've got on the screen here. The average team has 90 to 95% probability of achieving your goal if you establish a regular cadence of a meeting. This says check-in meetings, but think about how that applies to us, and think about it, how it applies within each of your roles and your projects too. Again, we're not holding meetings just to hold meetings, but the goal is to establish that cadence of checking in and having the meetings. If 138 or 138 different resources out there are teaching us that 90 to 95% success just by holding it, we're pretty much guaranteed that just by holding it, we're going to have success. I mean, that's worth I think, tying off to, guys. I recognize a lot of us don't care for meetings. Believe me, my life is almost 100% full of meetings. Whether you love them or hate them, though, unfortunately, they are essential for our projects. They're essential for your roles within our company and the day-to-day operations that are there. In fact, I very quickly threw together a list of some of the meetings that we have, right? This is a list that I could think of, coupled with some research that I had found really fast. I probably realistically only caught 70 to 80%. I know there'd be more. My point was, hey, we are a meetingist type of industry, unfortunately. So strap on, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, question. This time I want to ask, let's see, Ryan Wilcox, are you in a spot where you could respond?
Can't hear you, Todd. Sorry.
You can hear me?
I gotcha.
He meant to
There you go.
say he's too busy.
Yeah, right. He's too busy to attend the meeting, right? All right. So Ryan, I've been a part of a lot of meetings with Ryan, so I'm going to see if he gets this right.
Oh, boy.
From all the meetings you attend, what do you say are two things that really make those meetings productive?
I think the first one is an agenda, and the second is probably like a takeaway or like a return of report type thing. What are we going to talk about this time, and what are we going to do about it after this meeting?
Perfect. Okay. I had some follow-ups, but I'm not going to drill into that. So you hit the nail on the head, though, and you did create. So I threw together really quick, and this is for those of us that are trying to become a little bit more organized in our lives. I threw together a list of some of the basics that are there. Okay. I'm going to just quickly review those. One, invite the right stakeholders. I think we all see the value of what's there, right? That doesn't mean we can't invite additionals that might be being mentored or trained or things like that, but you got to get the right people in the right room in order to make the right decisions, you know. Number two, assign a meeting leader. Again, sometimes there's just one blatantly set, and that can be intentional too, not terrible, but you ought to at least talk about like, hey, you know, just so you know, I'm going to have you take lead on that. Is that cool? Oftentimes that will come naturally with other questions from that person. Like, hey, where do you want me to lean into? Do you want me to do anything specific? Right? Encourage open communication. Too many meetings out there. It is a one-sided type of discussion that's out there. And so always encourage it. When we interview as a company, guys, we always start off inviting those clients that we're interviewing with an opportunity to say, hey, raise your hand, jump in. Like, this is a fluid conversation. And the meetings or the interviews I've been a part of are always so much better because we start right at the beginning, encouraging, hey, let's talk about it, right? Some meetings you have your agenda and you need to cover specific items prior, but you can then open it up for communication. Take notes. This seems really obvious. Another one of those common sense that are out there. I've been paying attention more in my life as I've been in meetings in and outside of our company setting. I'm surprised at how many people don't take notes. They don't document the decisions or any of that stuff. At least for me in my brain, I can't remember it all. And so I'm always like the guy that just ordered a whole bunch of food at the restaurant and 20 other people ordered in front of me and the person didn't write it down once. Like, it's very rare that somebody's going to remember exactly the way that it was, right? Okay, another good basic, starting and on time, self-explanatory. Follow up in the right ways. Ryan mentioned that, right? He closed out like, hey, how are we following up on this thing? If all this stuff sounds daunting, which shouldn't because it's basics, recognize that you don't have to invent any of these wheels for you to be successful. These are basics, and we have awesome software that can take us to different places. So just lean into the software that's there.
You want it on the TV?
All right, John. I'm not going to cover this slide. Okay, I want to jump in really quick to 3 different types of meetings that I've been a part of in my life growing up in the construction industry. You guys are a part of all the time as well, okay? I'm trying to keep this thing interesting and fast. Leading into this, I want to ask another question. I think this is my last question. Cody Sorek, if you are able, can you respond? Let me know if you can unmute and respond.
Yes, I'm available.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. You were just about to get in trouble, so just kidding. Hey, in your opinion, and this is a good conversation, but in your opinion, who should be running the OAC meetings?
I think the project manager should do that.
Okay, project manager for who? Like, there's owners reps that can be PMs, there's architectural firms that can be PMs or RPMs.
RPMs, the general contractor.
Okay, thank you. Also hit the nail on the head. Actually, let's talk about it. How come? Why do you feel like you should be the one?
I think the biggest thing is that we're the ones in the field all the time. We know what's going on. We know the details. I've been on the owner's rep side, and you're on site once a week or maybe twice a week, and so you're not there knowing all the details. And so I think if the general contracting team helps develop the questions, the comments, and the direction of the project.
Perfect. Okay, Cody, thank you. Dovetails exactly where I want to go. I want to talk a little bit about why Cody's logic is accurate, right? And we always need to be sensitive to the owners that we work for. They're our number one, right? Sometimes the architects have been placed in that role intentionally for an owner. But Jeremy and I were talking a couple weeks ago, and if you take an example of a $50 million contract, and let's just talk about, hey, of the team members in an OAC, who really has risk? If you think about it, the architect really only has on a $50 million job anywhere from 2 to 5 million, maybe, right? That's not that much risk. The owner, we could argue that they have $50 million of risk, but I think that's highly debatable. I think leaning into what Cody said, the people that need to be there running those meetings should be Westland Construction. We have the greatest dollar amount of risk. We're the ones that have the means and methods to deliver. Now, we never want to run an owner over and take charge too much, but they should also recognize that, hey, we're the one that has the most risk here. And we also have the ability with all the positions that we have within our company to come better prepared and take notes and do some of that stuff. So I want to talk really quick about some of the do's and don'ts. These, and I know the list is probably massive. You guys have been a part of meetings where you've noticed things specific. These are just some that I've recognized, that I've sat in and been a part of in my career, which encompasses a lot of different types of builds that are out there. Really every product type that Westland does as a company, I've seen and witnessed and been a part of some of these do's and do nots. So do's and do nots. Be the expert, know what you should know. To Cody's point, we are the ones that should know everything that's there. Don't have it be the first time that members of the Westland team are hearing about things. Too many times I've been part of seeing that this is obviously the first time that we've ever communicated. Unfortunately, too many times, this is the first time that a project manager was even brought up to speed. And so for a superintendent or foreman to be coming into these settings and providing some of this information, and our project manager to be the one raising a question or hearing it for the first time, that's a bad thing, okay? Again, there's obvious exceptions, and we could debate a lot of things, but these points are true. Absolutely know the schedule. You should know it in and out. I have tried to drive my project managers to take ownership. Yeah, they may not be the ones actually day-to-daying on that schedule, but at any given time, a client has cornered me in the past, even as a project manager, and said, hey, where do you think we're really going to be? And you know what's embarrassing to say? I don't know. Or, you know what, I have to go look back at it, when we do get behind or things like that, we need to try to avoid those isms where we say, well, it is what it is. Too many times I've heard that too, and it can be a negative thing for us, I think. Good opportunities for us to demonstrate quality in OAC meetings. One thing I've also noticed is sometimes we hand out stuff that's not been proofed. And I know proofed is not a word, but I wanted to talk about it anyways. So don't come to your meetings unorganized, unproofed, or with some haphazard, unbranded document. You guys represent the best contracting firm in the state, and we're going to try to say higher claims to that, right? So you guys should come to your meetings like you've got all of these things at your fingertips. So come with those 3 things that I've got on the do nots, right? Do establish and manage owner expectations. That's an obvious. Advocate for the owner and design team. Ask questions, understand assignments, act as one, actually be a team. There's tangible friction at times when project managers of ours are having issues with superintendents. You can feel it and our clients can see it. Absolutely don't undermine the team. Jeremy gave a great example of what not to do, especially in front of others. You can have great one-on-ones with people, but don't undermine your team members in front of, especially an OAC side. Almost done here. Focus on solutions, right? Don't just make it all about the bad. Don't make it about problems, and try not to be defensive. We're a solution company. Document everything. It's funny how it's on this list too. It's because I think we're seeing that, hey, we may be failing a little bit. We all assume that we'll remember things, but oftentimes we forget. And then the other one I had on here that I've seen happen a lot too is we tend to hide behind our subcontractors. The teams I work with directly have tried, and our guys are doing a really good job in owning it and referring to we more, so when you're getting back to an owner, even though we know you're relying on a subcontractor, say, you know what, we, right? Because our contract is between Westland and the owner. Owners understand we have subs, but at the end of the day, whether it's a sub or it's done in-house, it should still always be we. So try to pull away from that. I've seen that a lot. And then I think these are big ones. Listen and don't overtalk. You've got to read the room. And this is in every single meeting situation that's there, not just OACs. You've got to read the room, and that takes a special sense that people have to develop. So an invitation to every single person on this call is start to pay attention on how you read the room. What if there's bad news? Brad, I don't know if Brad's on. Brad's going to kill me for this. I was in a meeting once where I said, we were talking about it as directors, and Brad said, well, our jobs are to figure out how to tell them to go to hell in such a way that they look forward to the trip. It's really not a Brad Hurst quote. When I did some research, it's actually out there in the public. I think Brad was making kind of a funny pun on it. So in all reality, like, don't ever tell them to go to hell, guys. It does take tact, and tact is something that as employees, especially leadership employees that have to deal with hard news, we have to figure out how to make a point politely without creating conflict. I think that was the reference that Brad was making. I just threw it on there to kind of tease him. So, okay, team meetings. You know what? I'm not going to click through all these because I want to try to wrap up here some of my message, but I know I have a little bit of time still. These on the list are super important. So I want to talk about a few. We talked about getting the cadence down. Our team meetings should happen weekly, and where we can, I want to invite people to be in the same room. Sometimes that's not possible, right? We're working in different countries, and so that's fine. But oftentimes we're in the same building, or our project managers, they can get to job sites. Try wherever you can to be in the same room. Meetings are so much better when you're able to actually have some context of looking at eyeballs and seeing the real struggle and stuff. The best thing with COVID, I think we all know, the screen capability. The worst thing about it is screen capability. Sometimes we hide behind the screen, and I want to just invite you guys to stop where you can, which is, again, a tough thing. The notes I've got on making a meeting worthwhile, you guys have probably reviewed some of those. Again, it's being intentional about what it is that we're meeting on. You're coming to the meeting prepared. You make some assignments. Again, there's that taking notes. And then you distribute assignments and follow up return report. the best practice for our team meetings, and then I'm going to move on, is really trying to anchor these team meetings in front of OACs rather than lagging them. I think we all know how much better our OAC meetings can turn out if we have an opportunity to really discuss and go through really what it is that we're going to talk about and how things look, and have others that can you look at some of that stuff too. So, okay, last one is subcontractor meetings. I put actually hold the meeting. I'm also shocked at how often I hear that our guys just aren't doing it. And this kind of applies a little bit more to our superintendent and our field teams. Just hold the meeting. I don't know that we have to say it any other way. If you hold the meeting, you're going to have success. Go back to that study that I talked to you about. Have an agenda, be organized, make them quick. You know, again, there's a lot of things on here, but when you're talk in terms of schedule. Superintendents, field guys, your best asset is, as you're talking about planning and issues and logistics and materials and all that, talk in terms of schedule. That's really what you have, that you're most accountable to, is the schedule side. Your quality side, we're finding as a company, we're naturally pretty good about it, right? And subcontractors we hire are good about it. So we need to be back on the schedule. Make time. I think this is important, goes along with the first one. Superintendents, your subs are your direct team members. You've got to make time for them. They'll recognize it, and then they'll also be able to feel that you're an advocate with them if you're making time to be there for them. On that same note, you're able to mentor and educate, which means you're building relationships, which is one of the focus within our mission statement. So, okay, really quick, another rhetorical. I just want to ask, have you guys think about this. Do I treat subcontractors like partners or problems? Good question. How often
Depends
do
on
I
the
ask those
subcontractor.
that work with me, which not only are the subcontractors, what do you need? What can I help you with to help you be successful? I think both of these are actually really good. The second one, at least I kind of hit myself on the head too. I think we imply it and we try naturally to do it in our roles, but how often do I intentionally actually look the guy in the eye and say, hey, man, what can I do to help you be successful? Okay, I wanted to close with just a small message. I know there's been a lot, and just being sensitive to time a little bit too. As a company and as a leadership team, we've wanted to make sure that we're finding ways and moments to implement our mission statement and our core values, like Jeremy talked about, into really everything that we do. And so before I jump into this part of the message, I want to invite you guys, find ways to do the same thing to your subs and to your teams and to your clients. Our mission statement and our core competencies they're powerful. And if we don't apply them and we don't talk about them more, then they're just like everybody else that sit on a wall. They don't mean anything. So I want to talk about the destination. Everybody knows Michael Jordan, right? Undoubtedly, and I'll debate with you, but undoubtedly the best basketball player ever to walk the planet Earth. I think he probably always will be. As we all know, Nike transformed Michael. If you don't know the story, I'm going to give you a little bit of the history. But Michael actually transformed Nike. Nike now, just a fun fact, Nike's worth $79 billion, guys. Nike annually, their revenues, depending on years, are between 46 and 52 billion a year. I want to just tell you guys a little bit of a story. So the guy on the screen, his name's Phil Knight. And I've actually loved the story of Phil Knight. Some of you have probably read different books about it, and there's different movies that are out there. And I'm pulling some of what I've learned from Phil and his lessons from both of those, and happy to tell you guys where. Well, Phil ran track at the University of Oregon. So he's a runner. That's where Nike was really birthed. When Phil was younger and during college, he decided to start a shoe company with his coach. It was called Blue Ribbon Sports back in the day. Obviously later changed the name to Nike, and there's a pretty big story that came with that. Nike, flashing forward, Nike continued to grow, but but it's a shoe industry, and the world started to be like, oh man, these shoes are cool things. So the competition started going as well, and it was fierce. A lot like construction, right? Like there's some great shoes out there. And so naturally that opens the door for fierce competition. Well, there was a time in Nike's life, they were taking some pretty heavy hits financially. And actually, they're holding on by a thread, to be honest. And at the turning point of where Nike, which was holding on by that thread, Phil Knight, he was having kind of an argument with Sonny Vaccaro, which is their sports marketing guy at the time, on an inability that they had of Nike to get some additional money for Sonny to pin the deal with Michael Jordan. If you've learned the history, like they had spent some money on other athletes, they just weren't panning out. They didn't really have a person that represented him in the basketball brand. But Sonny just had a feeling to keep pushing in on the Michael side. Well, one time during this argument, Phil, he said something that's impacted me, and I know there's quotes that are out there that I just want to share with you guys. In the middle of their argument, he says, hey, do you run? And Sonny says, no, Phil, I don't run. Like, look at me. I'm a slob. Of course I don't run. And then he talked to Sonny, and he's like, hey, running, it's hard. It's suffering. It's difficult, right? A lot like construction. And then he says, the illusion is that the finish line is the destination. He also adds to that, the reality is that the act itself is the destination. I want to focus on the act itself. For Westland Construction, the act is our meetings, guys. It's our tone of voice. It's the way we communicate. It's how organized we are, how well thought out and planned we are. It's how we look. It's how we talk. It's the way we present information. It's an everyday promise that the process that we perform called construction. Oftentimes we focus on the wrong word called completion instead of the construction. So the positive experience from any industry leading contracting firm isn't how well a building is just built. It's the process, right? So my challenge to everybody on the call is to be more intentional. Be more intentional to yourself and to your family and to your Westland team members. Be more intentional to your subcontractors and to your owners and design teams. The big challenge, guys, is to enjoy the journey, right? Don't just get the building completed so far ingrained in your mind that that's the only thing that matters. The positive experience that others feel from our Westland culture isn't in what a building looks like when it's done. It's how organized we are and how well we handle the act itself of building it. That, I think, is the Westland way, right? The act itself is the Westland way. That is what raising the level of service means to me, guys. We are naturally delivering buildings that look phenomenal all over the world. But if we're doing it and we're running over people and subs and our owners, we're making it all about the wrong things like money or things like that, we're missing the mark of why we as leaders established this mission statement right here. That it is one of our biggest focuses is to just change the act itself. And from that, we get to build people and we get to build projects and we get to build relationships the Westland way. So I think that's all I got. Thank you guys for listening. I tried to keep it tight.
Todd, I'll jump. Yeah, if you're all right, I'll jump in.
Yep.
For just a second. Thank you. It's obvious why and how your teams are being so successful, like all our teams, but the success we're seeing down in your division through your leadership and building all of your teams and your team members to be leaders is awesome. So thanks, Todd. That's really appreciated. Amy will get this PowerPoint out to everybody. And we'll ask, please, those who weren't able to make it, If the teams, if we had project managers or superintendents that were able to make it on project teams and the rest of the team didn't, please share this with the other team members. We'll also send the recording out as well. We go back to organization. Those action items are important. And let's see if we can get this to permeate a little bit, because I think, to your point, Todd, and you nailed it, man, like organization is directly tied to our accountability. Our ability to feel accomplished is directly related to our organization within our projects, but also our personal lives as well. So appreciate that. Any final comments, Amy, Todd?
Oh, I just want to give a big thank you to Jeremy and Todd both for taking the time to prepare and lead today's sessions. And I really appreciate you guys being willing to share your knowledge that you did with the group. It was a great session.
Yeah.
Oh,
Thanks everybody. Appreciate you guys hanging in there.
Yep. Thanks, team. And we'll get back together. You'll see the invites coming out for the meetings in April. So thank you. Talk later.
Bye.